In the last lecture, I discussed the relationships between folk and formal religious traditions and how the gaps between two were bridged. However, South Asian folk traditions also provide space to marginal voices which do not find accommodation in the formal religious traditions. Folk shrines and festivals remain sanctuaries for practices that are frowned upon by formal religious traditions. Ranging from practices like Sama and Dhamal at Sufi dargahs to festivals for transgendered communities, it is in the folk and marginal religious practices that an alternate discourse of religiosity and devotion is found. In this segment, I will highlight some of these alternate spaces that allow devotees to find meaning beyond accepted meanings of religiosity. One of the first spaces that I would like to talk about is the dargah of the Sufi saint Lal Shahbaz Qalandar in Sehwan Sharif in Sindh province of Pakistan. Sindh is one of the most multi-religious provinces of Pakistan with long history of migrations and influences. The basin of River Indus is the site for one of the oldest Bronze Age civilizations, the Indus Valley Civilization. Starting from the earliest references to presence of Buddhism to the presence of several Hindu shrines, Sindh also witnessed large-scale conversion to Islam following Arabic invasions in the 8th century Common Era. These influences came in the manner of both Islamic practices as well as in the form of multiple alternative discourses on Islam, popularly known as Sufism. Besides, Sindh was also on the root of several historical experiences, which meant that several kinds of cultural influences by way of musical traditions and popular narratives became part of the Sindhi way of living. In such a context, Sufi saints like Lal Shahbaz Qalandar managed to bring together a larger Islamic world and local Sindhi values to create his own syncretic understanding of being both a Muslim Sufi saint and a Sindhi ideal. Lal Shahbaz Qalandar was born in Marwand, Baghdad, and settled in Sehwan, Sindh. He is believed to be a contemporary of Rumi, the famous poet of Konya, Turkey, and is said to have traveled the Muslim world of the 12th and 13th centuries before finally coming to Sehwan, where he is buried. He is also believed to be a part of the quartet of 4 Sufi saints named Badruddin Zakaria, Fariduddin Ganjashakar, and Jalaluddin Bukhari, who were together called Chahar Yar or 4 friends. He is sometimes also referred to as Jhulelal or the Red Bridegroom, though he is not known to have married. The name Jhulelal or Uderolal also refers to a Sindhi Hindu deity who also has a close relationship with the river Indus. Shahbaz Qalandar's shrine is one of the largest and the most popular shrine in Pakistan and is believed to attract almost 1 million devotees every year. It was built in the reign of Tughlaq Sultans of Delhi and was completed by 1356 Common Era. We have numerous references to people visiting the dargah, including the intrepid world traveler Ibn Battuta. The shrine, which came under an extremist attack in 2017, contains several references not merely to different forms of Islam but also to other religions, which makes it a shrine frequented by people belonging to many faiths. One of the features of the shrines is the existence of both a Sunni mosque and a Shia mosque in the complex. It is one of the most revered sites for the Sufis of Qalandariya Silsila, who are known to have close links with Hindu Nathpanthis. Qalandars are known to be a renunciatory sect who lived in disheveled state after giving up all material belongings. Their practices also include some of the yogic practices of the Nathpanthis. Among the hereditary servers of the shrine or the Sajjada Nashin, one family is a local Hindu family. While both Hinduism and Islam have witnessed hardening of stances towards the meaning of religion, it is in shrines like that of Lal Shahbaz Qalandar that we see how folk practices have continued and have defied the hardening of boundaries. Among rituals practiced at the shrine of Lal Shahbaz Qalandar is a ritual of meditative dance called the Dhamal. Devotees, irrespective of their religion or gender, dance together while singing the praises of the saint Shahbaz Qalandar. One of the most famous qawwalis of the subcontinent, Damadam Mas Qalandar, refers to the shrine and the saint. There are no other instances of Sufi shrines where women are allowed to participate in the rituals. At the shrine of Shahbaz Qalandar, women of local minstrel communities also perform the dhamal at the shrine during the annual Urs. Because of its multicultural lineage, the shrine has attracted a lot of negative attention from hardliners. On 16 February 2017, the shrine was attacked by a suicide bomber that resulted in the death of 88 people. The Islamic State claimed responsibility for the attack. The following morning, the shrine's caretaker continued the daily tradition of ringing the shrine's bell at 3:30 a.m. and defiantly vowed that he would not be intimidated by terrorists. The shrine's dhamal was resumed the very next evening following the attack. A few days later, several leading Pakistani artists and performers partook in a dhamal at the shrine as a defiant response to radicalization. Another dhamal session was held to mark the one-year anniversary of the bombing and was organized by Pakistani social activist Shima Kirmani. Shrines like that of Shahbaz Qalandar remain important because they point out that the movement from little to great tradition is not a one-way street. Traditions around Shahbaz Qalandar draw not only from the world of the Sufi Islam but also from local cultural practices, languages, as well as other religious traditions like Nath Panth, which occupy a liminal space between orthodoxies. There exist several such folk practices across South Asia. One of the widely practiced but lesser known tradition is of Kabir Panthis, or the followers of a Nirguni Bhakti saint called Kabir, who is believed to have lived around the 15th century in northern India. The Bhakti movements in India propagated forms of worship which did not require religious mediators or shrines for devotees to have a relationship with the deity. In fact, these movements advised a complete devotion and surrender towards the deity. Kabir belonged to the tradition that came to be classified as Nirguni, or the formless one. Kabir is viewed as a rationalist thinker who proclaimed equal disdain towards all dominant religious traditions and advocated faith in formless deity who existed within and without the human body. Kabir's verses found their way into multiple religious traditions like Sikhism and continue to be recited in Sikh shrines. Kabir's compositions belong to the vast oral tradition, and even after his death, a number of people continued to compose under his chap or imprint. Today, it is difficult to distinguish between the original Kabir and the later Kabirs, which in a sense is exactly the point that Kabir's writing makes, which is the formless transition of humanity as well as of ideas. While there has been a lot of research on collecting Kabir's writings, a vast variety of Kabir's compositions are available in the form of songs that are sung by low-caste singers who are collectively called Kabir Panthis. None of the songs or singers can clearly be identified as being associated with an original Kabir tradition, but with traditions that flow from a larger corpus identified with the idea of Kabir. These songs proclaim defiance against the dominance of caste-based discrimination as well as religious orthodoxies. Just like Shahbaz Qalandar's Dargah, Kabir Panthis defy the boundaries set by orthodox practices and continue to follow the path set by Kabir. Traditions like that of Shahbaz Qalandar and Kabir fall in the liminal space where instead of unyielding orthodoxies, what we have is negotiation between people of multiple faiths. Another tradition that I would like to draw attention to is the festival of Iravan, which is identified as the largest festival for transgendered people in South Asia. Iravan, also known as Iravan or Iravant, is believed to be the son of Arjuna, one of the 5 Pandava brothers in the epic of Mahabharata, and a Naga princess Ulupi. Iravan's main shrine is in Kuvagam in the Indian state of Tamil Nadu. The tradition is popular largely in southern India, but also across the ocean in countries like Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia with large Tamil populations. Versions of narrative of Iravan are also found in other regions like Uttarakhand and Gujarat, where folk versions of Mahabharata are practiced. As the Mahabharata story goes, in the great 18-day war, a warrior was needed to sacrifice himself in order to ensure victory for the Pandavas. Iravan agreed, but as he was unmarried, he feared that he would not achieve salvation. However, no girl was ready to marry him as she would be widowed in a day. Krishna, an avatar of Vishnu, agreed to marry Iravan in the form of a woman Mohini. The marriage was conducted in full ceremony, and after Iravan's death, Krishna mourned him in the form of his widow. Anthropologist Alfhilde Beetle's extensive work on Draupadi's tradition, who was the wife of the 5 Pandava princes, points out that the cult of Iravan is popular all over Tamil Nadu and in some other parts of southern India. Shrines are dedicated to Iravan, and an important part is given to his sacrifice in the Draupadi festival celebrated to commemorate the 18-day war. According to Hilde Beetle, another boon granted to Iravan was that he would be able to witness with his own eyes the war that lasted 18 days. So Krishna allowed his severed head to be mounted on a pole from where he witnessed the war. Iconography of Iravan in the shrines dedicated to Draupadi depict him in the form of a severed head with a large moustache and very large eyes. He is depicted wearing a conical crown, which is protected by a cobra that sprouts from behind the crown. This marks his royal status. Iravan's sacrifice finds mention in several old Sanskrit texts like the Vishnu Purana, the Bhagavad Purana, Devi Mahatmya, etc., which are said to be compiled in their present form around the end of the first millennium AD. However, a more extensive presence of Iravan is found in folk religious traditions like the Barbaric tradition in Andhra region, Khatu Shyam tradition in Rajasthan, as well as in Garhwal. In all these traditions, the highlight of the tradition is the ritual self-sacrifice performed by Iravan, Barbaric or Khatu Shyam, to goddess Kali, a fierce goddess who demands sacrifice. The presence of Iravan's legend across geographically and culturally distinct regions tells us about the similarity of legends as well as about the circulation of Mahabharata myths in different regions. According to Hilde Beetle, with the development of regional states around the late first millennium AD, Mahabharata was translated into regional languages. The folk forms of the Mahabharata developed from these regional versions and contain several symbolic and indexical removes, where the Sanskritic forms were substituted for local forms. In doing so, local communities often imparted their own experiences onto the frame narratives of the Mahabharata or the Ramayana, as it may be. This also means that the narratives of fights among clans, of exile and sacrifice were common and were crafted into many versions of the epics popular everywhere. Coming to Iravan's festival, there are 2 aspects of festival that are related to Iravan. In the first part, it is a sacrifice that is ritually celebrated during the 18-day festival in the Tamil month of Chittirai or during April-May of the calendar year. In the second part, it is the marriage of Iravan and the widowhood of Mohini that becomes the central part of the festival. Both the parts are intertwined. Among the people who come to participate in the festival are transgenders who call themselves Iravanis. As they participate in the ritual marriage and widowhood of Iravan and Mohini, casting themselves as Mohinis who marry Iravan for one day. The main festival takes place in Kuvagam, though similar festivals are celebrated in other Iravan shrines in nearby districts. Not only do transgenders participate in the festival, but also men cross-dressing as women, often in order to fulfill a vow taken in past. Historical accounts of the festival recognize it as festival of Shudras or lower castes. During the festival, in the initial stages, it is the sacrifice and the martyrdom of Iravan that is ritually enacted, and his icons are ritually paraded through the town. On the 13th day of the festival, Iravan's soul is ritually transferred to a pot which is erected upon a staff. Following this, men and transgender women congregate at the shrine and get thalis or necklaces signifying marriage tied around their necks by the priests at the temple. The Iravanis deck as brides to participate in the ritual marriage. Following the marriage, they participate in dancing with Iravan's flower crown and other ceremonies which signify post-marriage revelry. The night of marriage is considered to be the wedding night for Iravan and Mohini, and the Iravanis engage in sexual revelry through the night. The next morning, Iravan's soul is transferred to his head and his eyes are open to witness the war. At this point, Iravan is considered to be dead, and ritual grounds of his marriage turn into ritual grounds for mourning. The widowed Iravanis tear their hair and clothes, break bangles as ritual of widowhood, and wear white or dull-colored clothes to signify widowhood. They continue to wear these clothes for a month before changing into colored garments. The weeping of the Iravanis is not merely ritualistic but is often considered a cathartic act signifying the discrimination that they face in their daily existence. The Iravan ritual allows transgender women to be placed at the center of activity for one night. The Iravan festival continues to incorporate rites and rituals that are becoming outmoded in Orthodox Hinduism. This includes animal sacrifice, consumption of meat as prasad or ritual offering. Increasingly, as Hindu ritual spaces obliterate older practices, it is in festivals like that of Iravan where these practices continue, allowing lower caste groups as well as marginal communities to retain these spaces for themselves. In the last segment, I had spoken about how gap between formal and folk religious spaces is bridged. But this bridging can also come at the cost of marginal groups whose practices are driven out. However, festivals and practices like that of Iravan continue to provide space for the most marginalized of the groups. It is in South Asia's folk religious traditions like the Iravan festival or Shahbaz Qalandar's shrine that spaces for both syncretic and the marginal survive.